All right, PM. Morning.
Good morning. Good
How you
morning.
doing?
Doing well. Doing well.
Cool. Well, we have some business to talk about because you and I have been in contact. I mean, we've been in contact for a long time and known each other for quite a long time and been friends for quite a long time, but we've been in heavy contact in like the past couple of weeks about some serious stuff that I think is worth unpacking. But but we're gonna get to that in a little bit. I know it's probably early where you're at and you're still shaking the cobwebs off, maybe. I don't know. Get the big
Yeah,
coffee.
9 a.m. Yeah, but that's really.
You do a number of noise projects and you have a label too. Your solo stuff, and I don't, and you'll have to like remind me of exactly what you're active with right now, but like Velvet Curtain, your solo project. What's going on with Velvet Curtain these days? Are you active these days in general with noise?
I'm far less active than I would say I was about 5, 6 years ago, or even maybe 2.5 years ago. But Velvet Curtain hasn't been an active project since probably about 2020. I played one show since 2020 with a buddy of mine, in collaboration, a guy who goes by the name Ruptured.
Yeah.
We did a thing like a collab under the name of Velvet Curtain Ruptured, but I don't really count that. That was a project active between 2014 to 2020. A few years ago, I just decided if there was no activity, I just didn't really want to do anything with it. And have just been pretty much active with a project called History of Leather since probably 2017, which is with another guy named Robbie.
Is Robbie the same guy who was in Grin with you?
No, Grin was Will Yule.
Will, yeah, okay, sorry, yeah.
Yeah. As far as I know, Will no longer does any kind of music. Really, he told me last time I talked to him, he's got a bunch of bass amps in his basement, and he works on some pretty crazy like vehicle like mechanic stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, that was great.
Didn't you play recently though in Minneapolis?
History of Leather.
History of Leather with Robbie.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
How was that to be back? I mean, I know you from living in Minneapolis, right? I mean, you lived there for a while and you live in Chicago. How was it being back in Minneapolis, and like, how do you feel, how connected do you feel to that world there?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, the show is the Tourniquet Noise series, and it was, for one, I don't think I've gotten paid that much money at a show. It's definitely in the top. I think we made like $500 or something, like more than 500. Yeah. Which is, if you know the history of Tourniquet, that's a far bigger payout than kind of traditionally that I got, or I heard that other people got when they were coming through town. But no, it was awesome. It was amazing. It was on the West Bank side of Minneapolis where I worked in various restaurants and bars for 4 or 5 years. So just the neighborhood is the place that I've spent a lot of time in. It was at the Red Sea, which you visited.
Yeah,
it was great. I mean, it's good.
It's a great spot.
Yeah. I mean, I was really psyched up on it, and I think that it's just great to see that series keep going in the city.
Yeah, it seems like History of Leather seems to be really Chicago oriented and kind of geographical. I mean, the name I assume kind of comes from is a reference to the museum there, right?
Yep. Yeah. So reference to the field museum.
Yeah. What is the importance of like regionality in these projects?
So the kind of the theme around regionality and History of Leather originated when we kind of started the project. I was listening a lot to Twin Peaks soundtrack, pretty obsessively. I really wanted to just kind of take some of that kind of like, kind of just like, not necessarily small town, Chicago was obviously not a small town, but just like, just bizarre kind of towny music, and try and make music that was just themed around, what we were doing, which was hanging out in weird dive bars, different places in the city, different places in the suburbs. and it seemed like an easier thematic to kind of bolt onto a project long term, aside to like just picking something for a release, which I've always kind of thought was kind of not necessarily. I'm a little skeptical about like theme noise these days. Um, but yeah, it's just a jumping off point for some kind of just kind of like personal authenticity with the project. And Chicago, just there's enough references I think in my own life and just the Chicago lore uh, to have a bunch of great album titles and artwork references and um, there's just a bunch of Easter eggs if you like know stuff about Chicago or know stuff about kind of stuff we do in Chicago, where we eat, like hang out, just all throughout that whole project.
Seems like it's pretty also connected to food.
Yeah, yeah. We both have cooked in our professional lives and personally, and we like to use food as a jumping off point because I know it's a reference point that you can go to. You can go to those restaurants and you can get some food.
It makes me hungry. I mean, the one about it showed like the board of a fried fish place, like a fried shrimp place.
Yeah, that was the Canada Fisheries. That's over on 95th, right off the bridge. It's actually on the bridge. His brothers in the car jumps over.
Yeah,
that's right where it is. It's closed right now because of they had some like weird kind of like rat health thing closed down. They made a bunch of fixes and then opened up, and then like 2 days later it burns down.
Oh.
Kind of. So, it's not open right now, but it was a cool spot. Yeah.
That's some. I mean, I don't know. Living in Germany, like so removed from that kind of stuff, it's really tantalizing sometimes. Like the album titles and like record covers of like the history of leather releases, just like the food stuff, the fried food stuff. It's like, oh man, that looks awesome.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. That's good. Chicago food is, delicious.
Are you from there?
Yeah, I grew up in a suburb called Des Plaines. I grew up in the home that my mother grew up in. But Des Plaines, it's like, if you want to get technical, you drive within to the city limits in like 10 minutes. 15 minutes, just Edison Park right over there. Northwest suburb. And then I moved to Chicago. I was 18 for a year and a half, going to college there. That's where I met Robbie from History of Leather. And then moved to Minneapolis for a while, and then moved back to Chicago.
Was it for school you moved to Minneapolis?
Yeah, pretty much randomly. I just wanted to move somewhere different, and that's why I ended up at the University of Minnesota.
It's interesting you say the Twin Peaks soundtrack was a big influence on it, because I thought of that when I was listening to it like just yesterday. I was like, this does have that like Badalamenti kind of structure, like the synths, the kind of moody synths. And then, of course, there's noise and things like that going. And not every track is that, but there's a big presence of those kind of like synth pads and chords and chord progressions.
Yeah, my goal also has always been to like one pet peeve, and I've done this too, don't get me wrong, but one pet peeve of noise that I hate is I like to call it like epiphany noise.
Ooh.
Where it's like these like big major chords, and it's just people, they need a new chord builders and shit. It doesn't, it's always like ascendant and you got bird samples and shit like that. It's really cheesy, and it's really, really lazy. And I think there's some history of other stuff that kind of does fall into that category. But it's a challenge. It's always been to try and pull out different chords. You
do that well, because that's exactly a big pet peeve of mine. I think I've mentioned it numerous times in the podcast. Even recently, I did a reviews episode, and I was like, it struck me. I was like, you know what? One thing I want to challenge people to, if they're going to put noise, they're going to put music or chords into their noise, do more than 2 chords. Because a lot of times it's like a 2-note fluctuation. Oh shit, balloons. Gotta turn that off. It's like a 2-note fluctuation, or like, like a major minor, like the most basic chord progressions or tonal like structures where it just seems like, oh, they were like, oh, I can, this is what I can play, so I'm gonna just put it in there 'cause it's like the easiest thing to play. And
Yeah,
that's really
definitely.
frustrating. And History of Leather doesn't do that. I mean, it had a lot of tracks that have really nice, interesting, more like either more evocative or more obscure, more complex music chords, and
Yeah.
I really value that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Epiphany rock, man, I hate that stuff. I hate stuff like Godspeed You Black Emperor. You know, like
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't stand it. And when I hear that kind of stuff come into noise, I'm like,
Yeah.
ugh.
It's something particularly like deceptive about crescendo
Yeah.
at times. But yeah, I've always, yeah, that was just the big things I want to try. If I'm going to put music into noise music, I want it to be a little bit more sideways than someone would anticipate.
Yeah.
But I also do want it when I do put music in it, I really want it to be kind of like stand on its own as a musical phrase that I'm injecting into it.
Yeah.
And then but also just not have the noise be some just kind of like whack ass accoutrement to signify some kind of drama.
Right. How do you guys split up the work in the project, you and Robbie?
It's a really good question. I think we work. So me and Robbie, yeah, we've been club friends for 13 years. We were roommates for a long time. And I think we were a really strange, intuitive process. You know, we've actually been making music for 13 years together, pretty much. And Robbie is quite good at engineering and putting together a lot of like just making sure everything's at like good levels and just any kind of the logic of having a functional recording setup.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I do a lot of like the conceptual, like I'll think of like a weird way of processing sound or some kind of process. Every track I feel like is built up with like a different set of processes. And so I'll just kind of conceptualize, think about stuff, kind of talk about how I want it to sound, think about like a weird way of hooking up the gear. And then Robbie will kind of engineer that within a recording setup. And then we'll just switch off playing it. And eventually it ultimately becomes just a long process of creating long stems and doing heavy sound, just like sound collage. So
Cool.
yeah, it's a really weird long process. We work, it takes us a really long time to finish stuff. We don't have very much leftovers in terms of the tracks. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
is it something you guys are able to work on like pretty often?
Yeah, Robbie's actually driving down from Milwaukee today.
Oh, okay, so he doesn't live in Chicago.
No, he him and his fiance are living in Milwaukee right now. And they are going to be moving from there soon too. So, you know, we're trying to knock some stuff finish. What could potentially be another release, and before he goes on, does a little bit traveling with his fiance.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what about your label? Is that you alone, or is that also with someone else? Recluse Activities.
Yep, that's with Robbie.
Oh, it's also with Robbie. Okay.
Yeah. We work together pretty much. You know, he's my main partner in a lot of this stuff.
Cool.
It's a very casual label. There's a CD that just came out. You know, I'm not very good at running a label, to be honest with you. I mostly did it because a bunch of people kind of just had sent me some cool stuff and had some time. But I don't really know what we're going to do with that right now. I think we're going to kind of continue to start releasing our own stuff again, or rather, we have never even released our music, but
right.
We want to put out some stuff on our own. Yeah, I just like the idea of having kind of just like a shoebox label. You know, I like being disorganized about it, and if people want to buy it, we have stuff. We have a bunch of stuff. You know, we don't sell out. That's for sure. No, the CBN Sleepy Tape did sell out, actually. You know, we got a bunch of CDs.
Never got one of those, I don't think.
It's good. Both sides are really good. Sleepy. Yeah.
What's Sleepy up to?
I think Sleepy is he's always sending me stuff. He's prolific, you know.
I haven't heard from Van Horn in a long time.
I got to see his studio a few months ago when I was at Tourniquet. And he's got a studio set up in his new house that he's living in. And yeah, showed me some cool stuff.
Cool. Funny. All right, so we got to get to brass tacks here, and this will be something for not everyone and maybe no one of my listeners. I think either people have been following this and are sick of it and are like, Jesus Christ, or don't care, didn't follow at all, and won't care. But I think really what we've seen here has been something quite spectacular. And like, I mean, okay, you and I are both fans of hip hop, and actually I'm going to credit you with